not buying from pre-qualified bidders that they used to say the PPP was doing, although we were buying from pre-qualified bidders. They sole source drug 605 million. I can go down the long list. You just take the audit report, drug bond, etc. And I need to remind people when they go there that one man got more money for renting a building as a drug bond than the entire region for capital budget for healthcare. The capital budget for healthcare for the entire region 4, where most of our people live, was half of what this guy was getting per year to rent one building, a house, as a drug bond. And they talk about corruption. So they want that. We now have to. I'm telling you all of this because we have to fix it. Now, let's talk about other areas. For example, fuel smuggling. We know now that a number, this was a criminal, again, another criminal enterprise with several APNU AFC bigwigs connected to it through the licensing of people who were selling their licenses and renting them to fuel smugglers. 2, you recall Sol, you saw they were recycling duty-free letters, billions of dollars in that area. And then an audit that was just done that had Guyana and the Army implicated in a scandal in just one vehicle alone. $895 million of fuel were stolen through one vehicle. And that the charges would be laid true soon. Guyana, they tried to return. Even some people that were recently hired tried to return to this old system of corruption, and they were dealt with. They had to leave. People were terminated and let go, from the board and from the management. We're not going to allow that to happen. But cleaning up, I'm telling you all of this because that's the crisis. I'm going to go on with what else was done. That we are busy trying to put back the systems in place. You know, for a tendering system, even trying to return it now to a rule-based system, uploading the information, all of that on the website. This is overloading because you have to fix it not only at the national level, but throughout the regional system. We're trying to clean up the fuel smuggling. We're trying to find out now about some of the other transactions. Let's go on to talk about a bit more. Duty-free concessions. Some people connected to the government, if they have a contract from the Ministry of Public Works to $2 million, they get a Land Cruiser as duty-free for the project. So what has happened, when the project comes to an end, they're supposed to either give the government the vehicle, or sell it, re-export it, or pay the taxes. Hundreds of millions of dollars of taxes are unpaid here. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And these are friends of a lot of the ministers and the others, the members of parliament now from the other side, and including Joseph Harman. The illegal sale of land. We have had a huge problem with fixing this. Huge problem. And I hope that the media doesn't forget about these things, because a lot of people were asking me before the elections, what are you going to do about these illegalities? What would the PPP do if it gets into government? I said to you then, we will take action against the people who have siphoned off state assets. Now suddenly a lot of people see this as witch hunting. Witch hunting. It's not anymore the people who have siphoned off state assets. So you tell me if it is not illegal for the Ben, who was at Lands and Survey, to sell land when he had no authority to sell land, because President Granger did not give him the authority to sell land. The authority has to be gazetted because the president is responsible for that sector. And the president gazetted his responsibility, President Granger, but did not give him the authority to sell. He sold land. Is that not illegal? 2, he sold land that did not belong, he didn't even have in his jurisdiction. So he sold land that was, the transport was vested to the National Sports Commission in one case. He leased a piece of land that a person right here at Lilendale, 5 acres, to someone who didn't even know about that the land was owned by a private individual that they bought. In fact, the land was the same land that Ashney Singh and Brassington were charged for selling in 2008 at $30 million an acre through pursuant to a cabinet transaction. They were charged for that piece of land, that they sold it illegally, although they were acting pursuant to a cabinet transaction. And then Mr. Ben from Lands and Survey leased the same land to someone. This is what we're finding out. You saw this situation with another case where land was sold that again he didn't have authority to sell, where the price was less than 10% of what others were paying for comparable plots of land here. These are illegalities. Now, notwithstanding that, we have had some engagements with the people from Karakir, and so we reach a settlement on moving forward because we don't want Guyanese who are caught up with the illegalities. We believe that Ben committed these illegalities, and the people, many of them were unsuspecting. And these are businessmen that we want to see succeed. So we have reached an agreement with Savants about that project, and we're going to move forward on that. And similarly with Karakir, we have also reached an agreement with that business entity so that they don't have to face court proceedings on these matters. We have reached agreement with Courtney Ben to move forward on these issues. Because we don't want to penalize unsuspecting businessmen. We want to go after the people who acted illegally. And we believe that they took benefits for these transactions. But you tell me, that is their legacy. That is their legacy. I can go down the long list of illegal sale of land. We've just heard about Winston Jordan transferring hundreds of acres of land to people who didn't pay. They have now a title without an encumbrance. So the title doesn't say this company owes taxes or it owes the purchase price. He transferred the land, hundreds of acres of land, to individuals, gave them the title without the people paying a cent, when they were supposed to pay like hundreds of millions of dollars. Is that not illegal? And so you will not hear. So when I see Winston Jordan just walking around the place doing programs now, or many of these people, then they're just trying to change the narrative again from the 5 years of illegality. But we're still in cleanup mode. We haven't even touched the surfaces yet. Every single day, we're finding out more and more about what happened in that period. That's why I say it was a criminal enterprise that was operating, not a government. This was a pure criminal enterprise that didn't care much about ordinary people. But there's a small group of people that they were busy doing illegal things for. And so today, I heard they're saying, oh, the cocaine. I've seen APNU now on a new thing. Oh, the PPP is back, so cocaine would flourish. That's their new propaganda. But we know what has happened because the people in the law enforcement agencies are telling us now how they had to stand down on some major issues. Now, we know that from a long time ago that APNU had connections in Suriname with many cocaine persons who were supplying the weapons a long time ago. If you look at the police reports from that period when we had the so-called troubles in Buxton, you would see that those were the same people who were supplying weapons to the criminals here, and that you had visits to them from many senior people in APNU. So they had connection. So the two busts that we've had, 1,000 or nearly a ton of cocaine in Suriname and half a ton in Oriala, probably would have never happened if APNU was in place. I can convince you, I can say to you, this is the collaboration between the drug enforcement agencies of the two countries. But it would have never happened had APNU been in place. We remember they love to spread this propaganda. Every day they're on the TV talking about this. But the guy who we're still looking for the shipment to Belgium was closely connected to many leaders of APNU. And you recall, you saw Mr. Bighead was recently convicted. When he opened his business, you check who were the people who were the guests of honor at the opening of his facilities. You check that. And they come back with their propaganda now about PPP and cocaine and all of that. So we are in a major cleanup mode, and that's the crisis on the political side. Look what else they've done on the Constitution. We now have to find a way to see how we can force presidents to behave in accordance with the law. And many people believe it could be done by constitutional reform. But really, you can't. We have to rack our brains as a country to think of a way how we'll force presidents not to act capriciously. Because it wasn't that you didn't have constitutional change and that he didn't know when he appointed Patterson illegally. He knew it because for 25 years, the PNC and PPP had a common understanding of how that clause in the Constitution would operate. He came along, capriciously changed it, and any president can do this. It's not the law or the Constitution at fault. It is an illegal behavior on the part of the executive. And I have no doubt people like Harman and the others are on the forefront of advising this. And then we had to go all the way to the Caribbean Development Bank, and thank God we signed on to another Caribbean Development Bank, the CCJ. Thank God that in 2004, as president, I took Guyana into the CCJ. Because in the 70s, President Burnham did not want an external review when they started to rig elections. Did not want an external review of the laws here. And so the court in Guyana became the final court. And he removed us from the Privy Council, recourse to the Privy Council that the entire Caribbean kept because they continue to have appeals to the Privy Council. He removed us from that for the very same reason that elections could be rigged in this country and then there would be no external review of the decisions. It could be baptized as legal by the courts, should court proceedings be filed. And you saw the cat jump out the bag. Again, in an interview recently, President Granger said we must limit the CCJ, their jurisdiction in electoral matters. If this doesn't betray the undemocratic nature of that organization, the party, or the individual, nothing does. Nothing does. And this is staring us right in our face, and then they talk about democracy and dictatorship. They want to set, the thing is that they would have rigged the elections. They're the only, let me tell you, the world knows. And so I see stories written by some media about what they're saying. The world knows that APNU AFC tried to steal the elections. The CCJ had to reject their attempt several times to steal the elections. Almost every country in the world, through an organization, OAS, Commonwealth, CARICOM, several in European Union, these are large groups of people, countries together, rejected that. Every political party in Guyana. And the only people who don't believe that the elections were rigged, that they won the elections, the only people who believe that would be Harman and this cabal in Parliament, and Ogunse and Lincoln Lewis and G.H.K. Lal and these others. These are the only group of people. If that doesn't betray something, that doesn't tell us something, then nothing will. That this group of people will try to change the entire narrative, even when the court recently ruled that their petition, throughout their petition, they criticized the courts. And now imagine Lowenfield going to court to block the SOPs from being made public. The SOPs are public documents. They were posted outside of the polling places. They are public documents. They should be readily available not only to the political parties, but to all Guyanese. The only party that doesn't want you to see the SOPs going to court to block that is APNU AFC and their surrogate Lowenfield. Does this tell us about who these people are? They had 28 years and they rigged the elections to stay in office. The first chance at power again, 5 years, they went back to the same old bad habit. Nothing has changed. And with what they're going on with now, you can expect nothing better from them. So we have seen that they ignored the no confidence motion, although that was clear too, came up with fabrication, 32 is greater than 33, all sorts of things, or 33 than 34. This is the APNU AFC. And so let us talk a bit more about their plans for electricity. So we talk a bit about what they are. What are their plans for power in Guyana? So we have blackouts now. We have a lot of blackouts now. The system is, in many ways, the transmission system is collapsing because nothing was spent on it. The improvement to the transmission system, we had money from two agencies, the IDB and I think it was the Islamic Development Bank. In both cases, they went out to tender and they gave a company, Chinese company that had a bid above the local company, nearly $5 million above the local company. And the local company, of course, with a partner. They awarded the contracts there, but that's on the transmission. But that project was left by the PPP. I noticed they're talking a lot about OCATUs, and so we left something there. So almost every project, the West Coast Road was left by the PPP. East Coast Road, everything. The bypass, which they didn't do, PPP. Almost everything. They didn't come up with any major new projects and left the financing that they earned for in the 5 years. So there was no planning and they didn't leave the resources. But that was the problem. The transmission system collapsing. No new major power plant. The major power plants that were in place when the PPP left office, we're still operating with them. The old Wärtsilä sets that we bought a long time are still base load stations. Just before the elections were called, just weeks before, Jordan illegally took money from the Treasury. He had no authority to pay for 46 megawatts of a new power plant that should have been in place since last year, that we're now. They didn't even do the foundation work for. They just went and bought the power plant. We don't know the circumstances under which that was done, but we're now trying to install that. But they took money from the Treasury to do that just before the election where President Ali was sworn in, illegally so, because there was no budget approved. We dealt with that issue, and it was not for any emergency. That is it. That's their legacy. They're still operating with units that have been bought and paid for and were operating under the PPP when we left office in 2015. Now we are trying to fix it. We bought 10 megawatts of emergency power. We're getting the 46 megawatts installed. We're already decided to use the $85 million we left in the IDB since 2011 to go 30 megawatts of solar in Linden and Essequibo and Berbice, so that we can, because a lot of these units, the places now one would be off grid, even when the new project comes on stream, the gas to energy project. We're trying to fix the system. The transmission lines are collapsing every single day. We have trips all the time because the capacitors are falling out, everything. We're trying to fix it. We will fix it. But that's what we're doing. That was their legacy. Nothing. And Patterson busy making all the decisions. For 2 years, he didn't have a board in place. So all the decision making on a GPL went to Patterson. That's their legacy on power. So when they talk about blackouts now, yes, of course, we'd have blackouts, but that's the crisis that I talked about earlier that we have to fix. And we will fix it. It will take some time, but we'll fix it. And we'll fix it in a way that gets the cost down, the system reliable, and get the price that people pay down to half of what they pay today. That is our promise to them, the population. We campaign on this, and we're busy doing it. We're still going to have blackouts in the short term, but we'd fix this definitively. And that is why we decided to move on the gas to energy project, which we said in our manifesto we'll do. We're moving on the hydro, we're moving on the solar, all of these projects. So that is their legacy. No plan now. So suddenly they have bright ideas that can light up bulbs about how to fix electricity. On telecommunications, they campaign on liberalizing the sector. You recall that? And then they did not do so in 5 years. And then we discovered that there was an agreement that nobody knew about that CATIU signed, basically agreeing not to do this. Well, we did that in a few weeks after we got into office. We liberalized the sector, and now we're working aggressively at reform. I mentioned to you number portability, so you can take your number across carriers, you can switch carriers. We're looking at spectrum and pushing more people to 4G services, better quality services, better regulation on the part of the PUC to ensure that the quality of the service that people get, all these calls, a WhatsApp call dropping every 5 minutes on some of the carriers. All of those things are being done now. Now they're being done. They've sat there 5 years, did absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. In terms of the environmental sector, what did they do? Except spend a lot of the money that we left. We left, first of all, APNU AFC, and wrote with a group of people in the period when they were out of office, wrote the Norwegians to say that they must not release any money to Guyana. They were opposed to the low-carbon development strategy. When they came into office, they inherited the money we had earned, over $200 million US. They didn't add a cent to that. They spent from it, took credit for all the things that they spent for. They even took money from their money that they criticized and that we earned through the sale of forest carbon to develop this green state strategy, which is totally useless because it has no project, no project or program. It's just statement, a declaration, declarative statement. They then went and promised and through the UN system, UNFCCC, and the Paris Agreement, that they will reach 100% renewable by 2025 in electricity generation, and we had no project to support that. Zero. We had a less ambitious target, and we had a project, a Myla Fall and solar. They had zero, and they promised 100% renewable, and now we are caught. The people are saying, are you going to deliver on this? And how are we going to deliver on it? Because there's there was no project to do that. They didn't even have a fossil fuel project to support electricity. And so we lost the new agreement with Norway. We couldn't move forward. They have nothing there, nothing to show for it. We lost globally the standing that we had where Guyana was seen as a model country. We had a low-carbon development strategy in a time when 10 years ago, today the world is talking about countries developing low-carbon development strategies, when we had one then. We were net carbon neutral years ago, all the time. Now the world is talking about raising ambition and getting to net carbon neutrality in each country by 2050. We're already net carbon neutral. And so we've been at the in the forefront of this. So then Harman says, oh, Biden didn't invite President Ali. You know why? Because we lost our standing globally. We had we were invisible at the global stage. You think these perfunctory kind of speeches about green economy and going to Bartica to plant some green trees, trees, or flying, take 4 aircraft to flying to Region 1, Mabaruma, to plant 2 trees and flying out on our day, that's going to cut the cost. So that is their approach. They were into symbolism, arches, planting a couple of trees, etc. No sustainable plan for the future that can earn this country money and generate jobs for our people. And so they had no plan in that sector too. So the recent crocodile tear that they're shedding over the mangrove, when they tolerated, because they issue, including Vincent Adam was there, when they issue the laser permit, environmental permit. 14 billion cubic flared is equivalent to over 1 million tons of CO2 equivalent. So the mangrove here, when we have to look at mitigating measures, the mangrove here, including in the root, not just carbon, that's a carbon store, including the root of the mangrove, will probably be about 11,000 tons of carbon. Over 1 million tons were flared, and APNU permitted that. And that everything goes into the same atmosphere. A ton of carbon emitted into the atmosphere or not sequestered has the same impact anywhere in the world. So it doesn't matter, it's like ton for ton. So on the other hand, now we are working with a European company to look at the mined out areas, 6,000 acres to replant trees so we can get carbon credit. We had to clear 40 acres of mangrove or give permission to, because there'd be development along that fringe. That said, we made it clear from the mouth of the river to Wales, there shall be, we want it to grow like the city side, like how many countries are. It must become just like the Georgetown side, where you have wharves and structures, etc., the people in that region also need development. They lost 2,000 jobs at Wales. Nobody jump up about the people who lost jobs there. 2,000 of them at Wales. And we have to create employment. Globally, the United States there's about $65,000 per capita. Europe, maybe the UK is about 40,000. We're $5,000 per capita. Our plan is to grow Guyana maybe in the next decade to $30,000 per capita. That's when our people would stop migrating and people would fly back here to live here. You have to grow this country per capita, and we can do so keeping our environmental credentials intact. So I see a few people who had nothing. They will cut down in their whole yard 20 trees that have in their whole yard. And then suddenly they're worried about the development here, the mangrove fringe. I agree that we must preserve mangrove. It was the People's Progressive Party. I was president when with the European Union, we got about 5 million euros to start that mangrove project. We planted a ton of mangrove here. We're preserving the mangrove fringe and we're expanding it. We have a nursery to do that along the coastline. But we can't, on the river, we have to develop our rivers too. We have to create jobs for our people. Too many of our young people don't have jobs. And you notice the people who are talking a lot about this, a lot of them are shedding crocodile tears, but they have cushy jobs and they have a good income. They don't care much about the young guy in Portmorant or Wales or Linden or Buxton who doesn't have a job, who's looking for a job. We have a duty. We said we would produce 50,000 jobs. And we have, that's our manifesto. And we'll do it sensibly without the least impact, with the least impact on the environment. And that is why I'm saying we're going to plant 6,000 acres of mined out lands. Nobody is talking about that now. We reforest that. And we have a program that will be funded in the Forestry Commission that would also see reforestation in areas that are mined out. Has the same impact. Same impact. And so this is crucial. People have to have a balance between development. We have to move our country forward, our people. These are the same ones who will go and say the U.S. is so developed and they have jobs and laud the U.S. Look at the United Kingdom. You know how much of the United Kingdom primary forest still remains? That is the original forest, not the forest. You know how much of it? Zero. They've cut down every bit of their forest and you've had regrowth. The primary forest, that is the raw forest, that was time immemorial there, like how we have virgin forests, which is that zero they have in the United Kingdom. They've had no old forests anymore. And now we laud the UK about their development. You know, they have development, they have a better health care. How are we going to fund these things for our people? So it's this balance. It's this balance. And you can never please someone. So the same people who are saying about the flaring and we need to add a fine or we need to penalize the flaring, we now working with Exxon, we agreed that there will be a fee for flaring now based on carbon. The price of $30 per ton is globally competitive. It's higher than some developed countries in the world. And that will happen even before the license permit expires in 2022, when that will have to go over to the Payara type conditions. We've done this. Now they have other issues, a whole range of issues. And the EPA has dealt with those matters clearly. So let me go on a bit more. Today, because we're talking about lack of planning. No plan for housing. What are the important things for people? It's jobs, so they had no plan for jobs. and we are working aggressively to generate jobs. A lot of projects, block making projects. The president mentioned about expanding shrimp in the savannah. That would employ another 500 people in Berbice. Working with the Amerindian communities to make sure that we have the livelihood programs go. Trying to get more call centers going here. Everywhere, lots of smaller initiatives as well as the big ones, pushing to have more jobs in the oil and gas sector. We're working on our promise of 50,000 jobs. We are working aggressively on it. And we're trying to, and each sector we are already seeing now how that will happen. And when we come out of this pandemic, there will be a boom once we come out of the pandemic. So jobs are important. That's what we're working on. We're working on housing is also important for people. So what housing did they do? Again, no plan for housing. They didn't build many houses, a few houses, and a few there. Already, we have a $15 billion program that is ongoing for housing, and it's preparation of land for house lot for people, as well as some building. It's employing thousands of people already in the construction. That is even for constructing houses for government. We have put that together in 8 months, and it's starting to roll because we have an aggressive program for housing. They had nothing in the years. The only people who benefited for housing in a major way were, what's the lady? Annette Ferguson, yes. So, and a few others. Nobody, ordinary people, didn't benefit much. Just before the elections, they busily started doing and giving people plots that they didn't have any infrastructure on. So housing is important for people. We're tackling that. Healthcare, important for people. So we have laid out what has happened in the healthcare thing is a disaster. Not only did the facilities not improve, but what happened is there was a deliberate attempt to steer the supply of equipment to certain people. We have cases where the people, facilities maintenance managers were told, allow the GE and the Siemens equipment to run down. We will buy from a new supplier in the hospitals. It was all geared for a particular output. So what the reality is that most of those things, the x-rays at Georgetown Hospital, none of the fixed x-rays are working, and until now, we're using portable ones. We're trying to get the people now to come in and service those. The other problem is the COVID has compounded the problem because we can't do the surgeries, the routine surgeries, so there's a lot of backlog. We have to find a way of dealing with that. So that's on equipment. In terms of drug purchases, you've seen, when we did the audit, it's maybe about $20 billion of old drugs in the bond. If we didn't clean those out and dump them, people were deluded into believing that we had the drugs. But it's expired, it's all expired. So it's showing up in their database, they have the drugs. And when the hospitals and the people go from the regional health officers go to collect the drugs, there's nothing there. It's all expired drugs at the central bond and even in the regions. We're cleaning that out now. It will take a while. We still have places, somebody said from iFlut wrote me, a number of people have been writing me about that. And we're gonna fix it. That matters to people. We have programmed $200 million to upgrade a number of facilities. The president spoke extensively through the Indian program, how we would work at some other hospitals, upgrading them. We're now seeking funding for a hospital dedicated entirely to maternity and children. That is maternal and a child hospital. So only, they would specialize. All the specialists, etc., will be in there. We're working on plans for the health sector now. So that's important to people. Housing, healthcare. Crime is another big issue. And we are very concerned, although the numbers that they showed us, and we asked that the police regularly updates the media with the numbers so they can be interrogated too. But that is crucial for us. So what we are looking at now is resuscitating the Smart City program because it's all in chaos and it's limited to 265 cameras, but taking this across the country and with a capability of monitoring and operating it so you can see what's going on. It would help a lot. That means we'd have to pass new laws about privacy, etc., but it's a law enforcement tool that would be crucial in managing, etc. The forensic lab and stuff like that, under this scholarship program, we are hoping to identify at least maybe 100 persons that will do. If you look at the scholarships on offer, where a lot of them are for forensic science and stuff like that, to ensure that we can better populate the forensic lab, the facilities that we built, where we have 40 new vehicles coming in next month for the police, equipping the police station, training of staff, and all of these issues are crucial. So there's an entire plan being rolled out to tackle crime and serious crime, and we're working aggressively with our international partners on drug enforcement and transnational crime, because those are important too. So these are crucial things for people. These are things that we are looking at. We have some concerns. You know, APNU had increased. Another legacy of theirs was all these taxes that we have had to remove. So the taxes on VAT on water, electricity, etc., food supplies, we removed that. VAT on exports, nearly 200 odd taxes and fees we've reduced, etc. And that has brought a big relief to many people. It's about $40 billion of savings for people annualized. But we still, in spite of that reduction, we've seen an uptick in the price of commodities. And not just food items, but steel, like zinc, almost everything, even lumber, futures, etc. A lot of this was mentioned, and people write every day because rightfully so, they're concerned about the cost of living. Now, a lot of this is imported because globally, a lot of the facilities are operating at limited capacity because of COVID, so they can't supply. And as was pointed out earlier, I think, by the president, the cost of freight in some cases have doubled and tripled. And then locally, also demand has gone up. So we're very concerned about that, the demand for stone, cement, etc. We're trying to open up more production. That is why we have said to GGMC, give out the quarry licenses quickly as possible, so that new entrants, we can have new entrants increase production. But in the meantime, we have to import. So it is a big struggle we are looking, but since we removed the taxes already, there is a limit to what you can do. But I want people to be conscious that we are looking at the cost of living issues carefully. Every day it's engaging the attention of the policymakers, because we have to, I have no doubt that once the pandemic is over and production levels go up, that things will come down. And locally here too, if we increase supply, then we may be able to get the cost down. We're very concerned about, because so much building is taking place, construction, like a poor man trying to build a home. Now the price for a carpenter will go up because the carpenters are making more money. How do you solve that? You can't tell the carpenter not to make more money. It means we have to train more people to be carpenters or plumbers or electricians, etc. Because in the future, there's a big construction boom steering us. It has started already, and it will even grow. So we have to constantly, we're looking, our planners are looking at this to see how we can do not just the big scholarships, like the 4,500, but more tech-voc type of training to put people quickly into the labor market so that you don't have steep escalation in prices. And on the scholarships, I've never seen a set of people, I didn't want to say stupid, but people who are so callous, people who are so unconscionable, people like Annette Ferguson and that whole gang, telling people, oh, don't worry with the scholarship, you didn't bother, when they were the ones who are major beneficiaries of scholarships, running into hundreds of millions of Guyana dollars for a few of them and their family, not ordinary people. They got that. And they don't want ordinary people or their supporters to benefit from this. They're harming the future. These scholarships are not PPP scholarships. They're scholarships of the government. The government has to serve every Guyanese. And people, that's our role. And so people should make full use of them everywhere, in every community. They don't care about ordinary people. They never cared in office. Now suddenly they're running around all around the place and going visit communities again. But they never did. So that is a major issue. On the IRI project, let me make it clear that I've seen APNU and their surrogates. They don't want any reform. Granger has made it clear. He wants the CCJ out. He wants ambiguous laws, etc. Now we have to, before the elections are held, we have made it clear. Lowenfield and the others cannot conduct elections. These are people who try to steal elections. They can't be there to conduct any future elections in this country. Secondly, the Representation of the People Act is crucial. So we made it clear that we have solicited from the public all of the issues that they would like to see amended in the law. The idea is to make more transparent and to define responsibilities in the act that are unambiguous, and thirdly, to put in place a set of penalties for people who transgress and try to steal elections. Any right-thinking person will support that. That's the objective. Every person will have a chance to have an input. So we are soliciting these views. Eventually, there would be a draft, hopefully by the end of June, a draft bill. Then that draft will be sent to the international community, all the political parties in Guyana, the civil society, and will be up on the website, and GCOM too. And then people would have 3 months in Guyana to give their input. And we will look at issues, we're looking at input issues right from registration to declaration of the results. So everything that is unambiguous, not transparent, etc., we made it clear. We want SOPs in the public domain before the tabulation starts, that sort of thing. Everyone would get a chance. When that is done, so APNU would have a chance to give their input there, and civil society organizations. And then when that's done, a draft bill taking in account of the input will be presented to the parliament, where the parliamentary opposition once again will have its input. So this is an open process. So when I see GHRA shedding crocodile tears, an undemocratic one-person organization shedding crocodile tears about, oh, the PPP is too thin-skinned, basically, the fact remains is that he is just repeating, he's lending to this perception that somehow the IRI helped to rig the elections in Guyana. That's what he started off with. The IRI in 2011 and 2015, APNU didn't have a problem with them. We had some issues with them, but APNU didn't have a problem with them. APNU embraced what the suggestion of the IRI and especially the Vote Like a Boss campaign. It started with the IRI. They funded it. Now, in 2020, because they're coming to support, not to lead, but to support a democratic process now, simply because the United States of America told them that you all were trying to rig the elections, and they're trying aggressively to get President Biden to change that view, but of course not. The people know. They think that the State Department and the others don't have long memory. The technical staff, they know this. So it would all be futile. Futile like their attempt to prove to the world, Harman writing about mangroves now. So just as futile. We support the entire international community being involved, CARICOM, the Commonwealth, everyone, but involved in supporting transparency, democracy. They've always done that, but the process would be led by Guyanese, this process. And I just outlined how I see it happening in the short term. This is just before we want to get that environment in place, the new law, before the next elections. Now, there are many other things that we have to work on. We have to work on constitutional reform, and we're moving forward with a process to establish the body that would lead constitutional reform, a body consistent with our manifesto and our position when we had the first constitutional reform. We will establish the body, a body comprised similarly with civil society, government, and opposition to lead the constitutional reform process. And listen to people should they wish, what they want. So if people say we want power sharing, we'd listen to them. If they say we want something else, we'd listen to them. So, and that process would be led by that body. So it's all a red herring, and when the undemocratic organizations, a lot of them are putting together the project, so they can't raise money now directly. And I suspect that the GHRA and the others are smarting from that because the project doesn't go through them. They have to, all the political parties had to face the people of this country. They had to face the people. We had the highest turnout in the elections anywhere in the world. So our people are involved. And they give mandate or they take away mandate. And so when I find it reprehensible that to be lectured by a GHRA that has never had a proper election in 40 years, and who do they represent? Now, there are civil society organizations that are advocacy-based organizations, and that's fine. In fact, they play a crucial role in society. But he has a partisan jaundice role, and it mirrors that of APNU. And so when I see all these WPA coming out, and David Hines got his own organization now too, it's a waste. The same riggers are back at it again, the WPA and David Hines and all of them. These are the people who are justifying the rigging. And you know why they're upset? They believe that this law, the reform of the electoral system would shut the door against them trying to rig again, or make it more difficult. And Granger didn't want, of course, he doesn't want even the CCJ to be involved now. So I don't want to pay too much attention to that. Maybe by the way, I think the statement by Amanza Desir was a racist statement. She believes that people who support the PPP, the base of the PPP, are basically stupid people, mentally lazy. It's disparaging of a whole group of people. The people who vote for PPP, at least we have a track record to run on. We have a track record of achievement. In fact, she should be ashamed of that. They have no track record of achievement. You go through the list. I've just given you a short list of things that they didn't have plans for, made a mess of, or they were corrupt. on. Clueless. They have no track record. And the period before that, when in their government, when they left office, we had the highest debt in the world, 913% of GDP. It's now less than 50%, and we're using 153% of revenue. A bankrupt country, they left us. Half of our population fled. We were seen as undemocratic, a dictatorship globally. That was after 92. Then they came back now, and they were similar thing. No track record on democracy, achievement, economic growth, nothing. They are only campaign on race. And consistent with that, she made that statement. She wants to make it look, have people in the PPP base, Indian Guyanese basically, because it's no doubt, we try hard we have had a platform where we campaign about the country. We campaign in every area. We made it clear all of our plans are for all the people of this country, and we will not be the PPP that led the independence struggle, the first political party in this country, if we didn't fight for all of our people or try to develop all. That's what we are about. So we don't have to go and snipe. Everything about them is race, and that's a purely racist statement. Purely. Don't all the prevarication and the justification afterwards were just to mitigate what was a purely racist statement, that Indo-Guyanese are basically mentally lazy. Yeah. Right. I think maybe I got a ton of more things, but maybe I should. I see I'm told not to continue. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
I have a lot of questions. I'm not sure you're going to take them.
All right, no, but I have a lot of time too.
Oh,
so
wow.
you can ask the questions.
Okay.
I don't running from
All
no
right,
questions.
sure,
You can ask as many questions as you wish.
the-
But what we will do, you can come back in one round. I don't want one person to speak for about 10 minutes. So we'll go a first round and then we'll come back. So everyone can get their questions into.
Appreciate it. The amendment to the ROPA, is that under IRI? And do you have specific features of this reform that speaks to the structure of the commission? It has been long recommended that it should be dismantled and the political nomination of commissioners should be reconsidered. And secondly, in your agreements with savants and Cartier, are these to derive at financial payments or settlements? And sir, in asking the police to release the crime stats, did you get a commitment for them to do so?
Yes, they have first of all, the police have no issue with releasing the crime stat. That's one. Two, on those matters, I would not wish to, at this point in time, speak about it. They were just being put together. We sat, we agreed, and once they're completed, we'll make them known. But just to say that the state will not pursue any legal action against these individuals any longer.
The agreements are still being worked on?
Yeah, worked on. Okay, the state will not pursue any legal action. And, the model at GCOM. So for a very long time, you're absolutely right that for a very long time, the international community, after we had enshrined the Carter Center formula in the Constitution, had been advocating for a technical body, one that is devoid of political representation at GCOM. We, given the experience recently of what took place at GCOM, I think there is a big reconsideration of this view, because what happened at GCOM, it was the technical body, the machinery that tried to rig the elections on behalf of APNU AFC. The chief elections officer, the deputy chief, and Mr. Mingo.
And so had it not been for a commission of the type enshrined in the Constitution, we would have probably had a result very different than we had today. And so, given that experience, Nazima, there will be a huge rethinking of this position. Yes, please.
Just a quick follow-up, sir. The amendment of the roll call, is that under the IRI?
Oh, no, this is not IRI, but IRI will support. So a lot of this stuff is they're not leading. They will support electoral reform. So they may provide consultants who will do the drafting for us, etc. But when the debate takes place is between the Guyanese who will decide what will finally be the amendment. It's the opposition and government in parliament that will pass the final law. And you'll have a full-fledged debate. Yes, please.
Gomes Cornelius, News Update. Mr. Jagdeo, can you say where's the administration at
regarding police reform? And can you say, well, in spite of COVID-19 cases right now, the spike of that, can you say whether the government is considering another lockdown? And can you say whether the government is also considering a second COVID-19 cash grant?
So, right, I'm not aware the government is considering another lockdown. I spoke to that point earlier about the effectiveness of lockdowns. I'm not aware that there is any such consideration. We are definitely looking at how to assist people. The big issue is administration. You know, it took us a long time to go to each home to get the money, the grant given to people. And we had a lot of difficulties too. And I have no doubt that in the country, because there was every family in Guyana we had to go to, that in some cases, people may not have gotten the money, and they did not get a chance to fill up the pink form, because some of them might not have been home, and in some families, people lie. You know, in some areas, like they say, like 4 or 5 persons say they're the head of the household. So we've had a rough time, and the people who are distributing this had to contend with all sorts of things. Now we are busy trying to wrap up the first exercise because we still have not completed the pink forms, assessing them and giving those people who are eligible their 25,000. So to go back through such a laborious process, if we had an easier way of administering it, we may be being able to do it swiftly. But we're definitely considering for vulnerable groups, like older folks and others, maybe single parents, that something, because that's easier to administer. But we are keeping constant the thought of helping these communities and people who need the help in the area. So that is on the card, but not necessarily for everybody, more vulnerable groups in the second stage, especially older folks, which could easily be done. You know, they're pensioners, they get their books, so you know their names. You can easily do a voucher and give them, and then they can go and cash it too, the voucher. So we're looking at that. And then the police reform, I'm very convinced. It's moving forward. There are lots, I just mentioned to you, there are lots of things, moving parts are being worked on, like that would all, when combined, lead to a more effective police force. So they're being run parallelly, like the smart city running here. Some people are looking at upgrading facilities, training, all of that. So yes, definitely, police reform. No, I said that at the beginning, that I don't have any,
information that the government is actively considering this now. All right, I don't have any such information.
Can you say whether there is a confirmation that the P1 variant is in Guyana?
Yes, and from Dr. Anthony, these issues you should talk to the medical people a bit more, because I don't want to deal too much with the technical issues. I deal more with the impact issues and stuff. But I think we've moved beyond the P1. There have been some other more potent variants globally since the P1. The P1 has been around for quite a while now, and that could have a impact on reducing the efficacy of the vaccine even greater than P1, the P1 variant. And therefore, that is, I think those are the more worrying strains now, the worrying variants. Yes, please. Okay, I think it's a bit of an adjustment, yes. We had a choice of if we had stayed with that commitment that we had, that people who are engaged with the government, because that you're right in opposition, that we'll take a tough position on them. There are quite a few people. There are quite a few. So it's not, but that meant we would have had to prosecute Karakir and Sevens and Ben and a number of other, as co-conspirators. And we believe that, I think it's time that you move forward on those people. The public officers are the ones who sold the land. So we took a conscious decision that we will not go to the court, because that would have resulted in a setting aside of the transport for the land that Savans has. It was clear, because they did. First of all, the guy had no authority to sell, and it was land belonging to another entity. So, but I think. We just wanted, the guy had a lot of plan, and they'd done some development works and stuff like that. And we want to see people succeed too. So that is why we didn't pursue the same hard line. And there are some people we'd have to go after, especially public officers. Some of the public officers. We'll go hard against some people, but others, or else we'd end up in court every day and on hundreds of issues.
Are you taking the same stance with BP as well?
No, we have not had any settlement with that gentleman.
And a question on gas. It has been stated that Guyana has 20% associated gas. If the government is to become based by those who do not want to see the execution of the gas power project, what is our option? Only a certain amount can actually be rejected. So would you not have to...
Flare. Exactly. Because if you can't re-inject the gas, you'd have to flare it if you don't use it for something else.
So those are our two options, either use it to shore or flare.
Yeah, yes. Well, if you don't re-inject it, and you can't re-inject it, if all could be re-injected, that's a different matter. But if you can't re-inject reject it, and you can't utilize it for any other purpose. You'd have to flare it. And that is, we have a no flaring policy. We have a no flaring policy. So that is why we believe that the gas, and we can go through the numbers. You know, a lot of people, and let me be frank, because we'll come to this issue at another time. The Mile Fall project, everyone says they're jumping on this bandwagon, renewable right away. So we have to get to renewable energy, and we want to get there. But what are the means to get to renewable energy? What can we do now? The wind power can't, for Guyana, supply 500 megawatts of power, okay? Because, first of all, it's impossible. Let me just take that out. Solar can play a role, but solar cannot be long-term base load. You have cloud cover for a week like how we have now, you have difficulties. You're going to black out all over. And then 500 megawatts is what we need. Right now we're generating 130 megawatts. We need 500 megawatts to put lights in every one of our roads, all our communities, reduce the cost to our people. Everyone would want to buy AC because they can afford it. The cost thing will go up because, cheaper power now. So what are the other options? It's hydropower, basically, because we're not doing nuclear here, and nitrogen is still experimental. So it is two things. It is hydropower or a transitional source, which is gas, which is less polluting than the others. Now, say everybody who love the environment want us to go only to hydro to do this. The hydropower, we'd have to clear 25 square kilometers of forest for the basin. 25 square kilometers. So when we negotiated the first agreement with Norway, that was excluded from the allowance. Okay, because we knew that we were going, but because it has a long-term impact of decarbonizing the energy sector. But to build a hydro, you have to clear 24 square kilometers. We're talking about 40 acres here. And so what are they going to say, the others? Don't build a hydro then, hydropower. So what are we going to do to achieve renewable energy? So when you look at the thing in a bit more complex from a policymaker's perspective, not madcaps running about, then you have to have some trade-offs. So 25 square kilometers cleared, but the long-term impact is great because you decarbonize a major sector of your power source. So then you don't use the fossil fuel to generate. So that is the trade-off. And so people have to have a more nuanced, long-term understanding of this. And that's why gas is so crucial as a transitional fuel. Because if we didn't have gas, we would probably have to do a mile and another hydro. And solar too, if we wanted to get to 100% renewable at some point in time. That's the approach. So when you have a lot of these issues, people have to think through them. Yes.
You opened up the press conference by talking about the government's vaccination campaign. I just wanted clarity on whether you were part of the negotiations to purchase the Sputnik V vaccine. And if you were, can you name the company in the UEA that the government has purchased the vaccines from?
Okay.
And thirdly, on the same topic, we talk extensively about the actual price for the vaccine. But can you say if there are any associated costs for storage or transportation that the government has also incurred?
Well, the thing is that the first set of vaccine, from what I gathered, was $20 per dose. The key issue is we looked around the United States.
We couldn't get any vaccine. We asked Europe, we tried through COVAX, nowhere. So then there's a company associated with the prince from Dubai who came here. I don't know the exact name of the company,
Is
but
it Arugulf?
I don't know the exact name of the company because the permanent secretary can give you that. They did the transaction. But I know that they were supplying Africa and some other countries, and they had limited supplies too. So we were pressing them to sell us some vaccine. At that stage, we probably would have paid anything if we had just to get some vaccines to our people because we're not getting from anyone else. So that is how we got the first set, and that's the first 200,000 we bought, which would have been 100,000 first dose and 100,000 second dose. But halfway through, we decided to buy another set. And I think there's been some slight increase in the transportation because they had a difficulty bringing in the vaccine through Miami. Nobody wants to transport because there are lots of risks. You have to keep it in the dry ice, and at a certain temperature, 19 degrees, I think, throughout the journey. If you just have a little slippage on that, it spoils the whole batch. So I think there's been some small increases in cost there, but nothing outside of the purchase price. So you can get that information from the Ministry of Health, and that is how the vaccine. Now we are exploring another source in Europe now that may be slightly cheaper to get the same for the next set of vaccines. But they're still not sure that they can supply it. But we're exploring another source. But there's nobody selling now the vaccine. That's the problem. Nobody is selling. We tried several times through the US to get the AstraZeneca that they were not using, any other. Our people, we can't be nitpicking about a few dollars when our people's lives are at stake. We have to, if that's the only source, we have to buy it. Our people are not any less deserving than people who live in these developed countries. I have to get all our people vaccinated, all 500,000 adults. Yes.
Very quickly, could you confirm, sir, that an EIA was done for the Versailles project? And citing that you said that that area has been earmarked for development, can we expect similar actions? And I'm referring to the mangroves there.
Yeah, sure.
It has been alleged, sir, that several ICT hubs in hinterland regions across the country are now defunct. Could you shed some light on that? And even in the absence of an official announcement by the police force, could you speak to whether there is perhaps an increase in crime and narco trafficking, and what is your government's plan to tackle those?
Yeah, sure. So straight like from the APNU playbook there. But on the last one, that's why I made this point. I believe that you've had more enforcement action since the PVP got into office. You've had some of the biggest busts ever in the history of the country. I believe that the drug dealers didn't become good boys in the last 5 years under APNU, and believe, because we have APNU in office, we'd stop doing the drug trade. I believe that it was going through undetected. And I'm extremely pleased that with the enforcement action, and the government is, in the last several months, you've had 3 of the largest busts in collaboration with other countries, working with them, with tons of cocaine seized. So I believe that there was some forces, as I mentioned early, under APNU that were closely aligned to protecting people, drug dealers. I believe that sincerely, given their record. Secondly, the ICT hubs being defunct. Let me just say that APNU we have had the money under Norway, $17.2 million US, was set aside under the PPP for ICT hubs in the hinterland. APNO came into office. They spent about $5-6 million, and a lot of the equipment that were bought, so under that money that we left, are now only now being implemented. So we have identified 200 areas in the hinterland, because that was the concept for the original project. The solar panels and the computers were bought for the hub, and there was no money in the budget. They did nothing to create the hubs, to do the infrastructure. So we have had to put money in the budget. We have given to each Amerindian community a couple of $1 million, and some we still have in the budget to do directly to fix up the place where the hub will be. So they just bought the equipment, because on equipment purchase you can probably make money. Using the grant we have, and that Cathy was busy running around the country, opening up all over the place. She was shameless, didn't say that the money was left by the PPP under the same Norwegian agreement that we earned when they criticized. And so now we're trying to now make functional the 200 hubs. They had a few through NDMA that they were giving, I think, at a low level of bandwidth, and it was costing us $13 million a month to pay for bandwidth, but very minimal levels in the hinterland. We have to see, once these hubs are in place, to find a method that will allow us to supply bandwidth to some of these areas at a cheaper cost. So the issue is, most of these places were just stuttering along. They had a couple of batteries laid out there without any equipment, etc. That's what they call hubs. The major project is being implemented now. It's under the Prime Minister's office, and you should get a full update for it. It's about 200 communities that are being worked on. The third thing about the police, what was it? Official announcement? Oh, the EIA, yes. The EPA is dealing with this matter directly, but as your latter point about what I just said, and yes, the answer is yes. That area from the mouth of the river all the way to Wales is slated for major development. Now, mangroves, one other thing. The mangrove swamps, don't prevent flooding. Water can go through mangrove. You have to have structures there too. And so part of the development of the west side into like a mini city where thousands of our people will work to, and connected with a bridge to the east side, that it will have structures to prevent flooding. So there have to be, if mangroves are removed, etc., they are replaced by structures to replace flooding. But the way I see it is that the whole area will be developed. But mitigating action can be taken elsewhere. So if you remove mangrove from there, we're planting mangrove along the coast. And we have a project to do that. As well as in the Aichuni, Kwakwani area and stuff, the project with the mine-out areas to do about 6,000 acres of replanting of trees that will earn us carbon credit to and replace the capacity to sequester carbon from the atmosphere that you take out here. So you balance development and environment. Yes. Nazima, you can go for the second one. Okay, or Dennis. All right, okay. Oh, yes, and you're not through the first one yet.
Sir, could you say with respect to the vaccination program, whether there was a plan to purchase single-dose vaccines, given the fact that, according to the statistics that have been provided, just about 50,000 or so have gone for the second dose.
I didn't get that, Dennis.
I'm asking if there's a plan to instead
But-
purchase single dose.
Single dose. Well, it's just Johnson & Johnson that's doing the single dose vaccine. And we have no offer from Johnson & Johnson. If we can buy that now, then that's fine. We will do that. But we have no near-term plan of an offer that Johnson & Johnson is making any such vaccines available. All of these vaccines have been bought up by the developed countries long ahead, and they're now releasing the companies from selling. Canada bought 10 times more than its entire population. 10 times more it paid for. And would now release the companies to sell to us in the third world. Why do you think CARICOM has been complaining, and we're talking about vaccine apartheid? That because countries like ours, developing countries, can't get vaccines to buy. You have to go wherever. That's why so if we can get the single dose, then that may make sense for some people, you know?
Why I ask is because of the context of Sputnik itself producing a Sputnik Light, which is a single dose vaccine.
Yes, but that is not available at this time, but we're not done when we vaccinate the adult population. There are some other types of vaccines that are being developed that are safer for below 18. So most likely, once those are rolled out and used in the developed world, we'd have to start looking at that. Because we're planning to open school on the 1st of September. We're planning to open school on the 1st of September. It is going to open.
And my next question, sir, is given the low uptake on the second dose vaccines, what analysis and what plan is in place to stockpile oxygen and to have more beds available?
There is not a low uptake on the second dose, you know. The second dose so far is 40-something thousand. But remember, people have a date at which they got, right? So if you got, I am assuming that everyone who took the first dose, 178,000 or people, that they're going to be willing to go back and take the second dose. For example, my second dose is not due as yet, although I can go early and get it, and I may very well do that. It's because they're storing it, the AstraZeneca, the second dose. So this is, I can go a bit earlier and probably get it. But I have a date on the document that I got when I got vaccinated, that date, I think it's in early June.
But even then, there's a slowdown in taking up the first dose.
Yes, there's slowdown in the first dose. You're right about that, not the second dose. So that is what I'm talking about, the hesitancy of the vaccine hesitancy. We've seen it around the world. We've seen it in the region. We've seen it in the US. But here in Guyana, that's what we're encouraging people to do. Come out and get vaccinated. So this is where the media has to help us to debunk some of the myth that some people are spreading about the vaccine. Because it's a national task. This is not partisan. It's national. The whole media should try to debunk the stupidity that sometimes goes on, you know, when scaring people into not taking the vaccine and putting them and their families at risk.
So any plan to stockpile oxygen?
Okay. I'm assuming we built up the capacity. They brought in the tank because remember at the convention, the conference center, not Lilendal. They didn't have a tank. They had these smaller bottles that you had to replace every 2 hours or so. So we got the tank in now. So I assume that the ministry is making full plans for the future because we have, I think, 19 in ICU and about 90 in the hospital as of today. And we're hoping if you vaccinate, you may be able to keep the number down, right? And you're not going to get the severe symptoms. But they must plan for the future too. You're absolutely right, not just not just getting more beds, but oxygen and everything else, so that if we have spikes, we can handle them.
And my final two questions, sir. How are negotiations proceeding with Exxon for the use of the associated gas for the gas to shore project? And secondly, when will Exxon start paying fines for flaring, and how much gas so far is subject to the penalty?
All right, so the fine, they would start paying the fees because for excess flaring. They would pay the fees for flaring from the 26th of May, the morning of the 26th of May. Then the 25th of May, it expires, and then they pay for that, for that day. So it is approximately, they say they're flaring about 15 million cubics per day now. That will be equivalent to about 1,152 tons of CO2 equivalent, or just below that for carbon dioxide. And so if you work out 1,100 and something, maybe tons per day, say 1,100 tons per day, multiply by $30 per ton. Multiply by 36 days that they've applied for the continued flaring. It should take us to about 1.3 million US. Around that. That's the calculation for the period that they've applied for. So about 1.3 million US dollars.
And there's no retroactivity in this amended lease?
As far as we're concerned, no. But if you look at the agreement, it gets triggered now. And so the two questions have been raised. Whether this will affect this stability clause under the PSA, that they'd have to be compensated for this because there's a stability clause, and the answer is no. And the second thing is that whether this fee will be recoverable against cost oil, and our position is no.
That's a position, but is there an
That's
agreement?
our position, is no.
But do you have to reach an agreement in this position?
Yeah, well, the thing is that we have a method of disallowing this if it comes up. They haven't claimed it. Like I gather, Kaichor keeps asking about interest rates and stuff like that all the time, and with a ranting all the time about what interest rate. And so far, the interest rate might be crucial, but so far there has been no demand from Exxon to recover interest rate on the project through from cost recovery.
And I had an earlier question about negotiations so far for...
Oh, well, we have not, as I said before, we are recruiting a commercial expert. We have advertised for that person, the commercial expert, that would lead the negotiations on the gas, but we are aiming for zero, no payment whatsoever. I said that before. We don't want to pay for the first 50 million cubic. For first 50 million cubic that is coming in, we want the gas for free because it means even a lower rate of electricity for Guyanese. It could even come below the 6-7 cents per kilowatt hour, which is half of what we're generating at. Now, there was one clarity that somebody asked the president about that issue about the co-ownership of the pipeline, which I said there. But that co-ownership, our position is only up to 2026 when it's fully paid. Then it comes to the government totally.
But you already agreed with Exxon for the first 50?
No, that we would have 50 million cubic per day. That is clear. It is the price at which it comes in at now. Our position is we're not paying any money for it because, and I shouldn't be saying it so crudely, but the state should not pay for that because the PSA says that you have to pay, there's a price for gas there if it comes. So our position with them is that this should be free. And this is how we are saying, consistent with our position, that whilst we will not renegotiate the PSA, but we will have to derive additional benefits for Guyanese from the PSA. Huh? No, but I just told you, no, because it is not like we have to do it tomorrow. Remember the gas? We haven't even completed the studies to start building the pipeline. The studies are ongoing now. There are several studies. I have a document that I can share with you who the people were contracted to do the studies and stuff like that. And so if at some point in time you can get that information, I can share it with you later over the weekend or so. Who were doing the studies on the LIDAR, geotechnical, geophysical, environmental impact studies, all of these. So you can later, they're busy working now, and that would influence the design. So the commercial agreement on the gas could have waited a little bit longer, but we have a specialist that we are recruiting, we advertise, as you saw. Yes.
Marcel Thomas, the Saarbrück News, I'm specialist. Asking for a status update on marketer for Guyana's oil share. We haven't heard from that.
Oh, well, then the ministry has to. The ministry will have to give you a full briefing. I'll ask them. They've put all the studies that I promised when I met on the website. The studies that were done on the pipeline. I think
Not a pipeline, the selling of the oil.
yes, that's done. No, but I
marketer.
said they will have to give you a briefing on that. When the last time I had an engagement with the owners and their editors, I promised that all the studies that were done, we'd upload these studies to their ministry's website, and they have done so. I've confirmed with them, they've done that. So the studies are there. What I do, I tell them to give you a briefing on the marketing of the oil.
Okay, that's one. And I needed clarity on the laws for local content. Should we expect that in-law would be that for certain services, it must go to Guyanese? Would that be Guyanese or Guyanese companies? And then if it's
Yes,
Guyanese
but
companies,
Guyanese companies, but without defining what a Guyanese company
and
is,
that was my next point.
then it will make no sense. So in the legislation, there'll be a definition of what a Guyanese company is, because you can't be a foreigner and then just come here and incorporate and do that. And by the way, with this thing about the cement plant, those people are gone, but the gentleman who owns the company, I saw he wrote a letter of apology. He said that their behavior was unacceptable, and he had apparently gotten ahead of, like any project, the GRA and Go Invest will process some concessions for you, but you have to, that means provided you're acting lawfully. So they've put a hold on all of that. So now the company is welcome to invest here, but it has to seek all the regulatory permits consistent with the law. So if the EIA and the residents don't want it there, that's a different matter. You would have to move. But they're welcome in Guyana. That is the owner and the people, but not these two people who believe that they can disparage our country and act illegally here. They're not welcome here.
Okay. Just one, David. Oh, do you know anything about the GIPEX conference, if it has been indeed cancelled, or government participation?
I know once this Valiant is organizing it, we will not participate, and I'm making it that very clear. I spoke about the company Valiant when we were in opposition. We believe it's connected to a few individuals. We don't We don't have a high regard for the company, and I don't want to say, I know a few well-connected people in APNU who may be front for this company. And they were creaming, I don't have to give all the details here, but they were creaming resources. So we believe that these things can be indigenously organized too by Guyanese. Why can't we, Guyanese, why do we have to bring a UK company to organize a conference? And people make a ton of money from this. We're just talking about local content. Can we put together a group of Guyanese who will organize a virtual conference on oil and gas? All the speakers are our people, or those invited from the companies are here. I believe we should do that more. Guyanese should be at the center of all of these things. We're just talking about local content. So that's my position. We're quite clear.
That government would not participate
No.
if it's valiant. Okay. My substantive question now. You based a lot of this conference on saying that there's been no planning. There was no planning, by APNU during its 5 years, and you list a number of reasons to illustrate
that was not like absolutely. They planned to rig the elections.
Okay.
So there was planning there, so.
My question would be this then. There was no planning, yet the PPP would have based its flagship gas to shore project that it's now saying on studies and plans that were submitted by the APNU AFC. Could you justify that then?
But that's where you make a fundamental mistake. There was no plan by AFC APNU. They had studies that were done by independent organizations. Had Patterson done this study, or Harman, or one of their technical persons, you want to bet we would never use it. It was the Inter-American Development Bank that did a study. It was the Japanese who did this study. I didn't see Harman or their technical group doing that. And that's just study. Where is the plan? Where did they say the pipeline would go? Have you ever seen that from APNU? So that's where you're mixing up studies with plans.
No,
now we use the technical studies done by the international organizations which confirm one point, that the project is a feasible one. And we didn't even need a study to do that, given the back of the envelope calculation that you can do, any sane person can do. Let me don't get into trouble for saying people are not sane. But it's a no-brainer, basically, for any person who does a back of the envelope calculation. They just take what we are doing now and what the total cost would be, what the payback period like, what the savings would be, and then you would say, oh, this is a great project. You have to do it. And then it's environmentally cleaner than the heavy fuel oil. That's the only point that we took from these studies, not APNU plan. APNU had no plan. The only plan was to buy the land to get the pipeline on the land owned by one of these guys. They had no plan. And a big confusion. Last time I didn't address it totally. I just let it slide. But they had no plan, zero. These are studies. All right, yes. So, any first wrong person? Yes.
No, there is some clarity on the mangrove issue. There hasn't been much of a debate on allowance for development and all of that. I think the key issue with the mangrove project is that the company went ahead and cleared the mangrove with, although they were told
but people, I agree that people have to follow the rules everywhere. But the point, people have to follow rules. It's a rule-based country, and we're happy, really. But the point about the development, no use I come and shed crocodile tear here. I'm telling you how we're mitigating in elsewhere. I'm telling you about why we need to balance development with this stuff and how we're going to protect the area from flooding. And I'm telling you about the need for jobs and development and on our people over there and across the country. And I'm so pleased that the Guyanese will, because these shore base and everything, the foreigners come, a Guyanese would be willing to do a project in excess of $100 million, where we end up $200 and something million project, and US dollars. And he's from that region too, bringing back development to our people there. When that area is done from the corridor, you would generate easily in that region, I think, 20, 30,000 jobs. 20, 30,000 jobs the development corridor will bring. That alone there. That development corridor would bring. And people from Region 4, because you would have a 4-lane bridge and bypass road, have easy access over, people can work there. We have to develop our rivers too. When you go in the developed countries, both sides of their rivers are developed, etc. Why, you know? So yes, go ahead.
Van Manakchand again, thanks. Sir, on that same issue of developing, what do government plans to do to ensure that investors adhere to environmental best practices and going forward, especially since you're going to develop the riverfront?
Sure, but they all have to, that's why I'm saying follow the rules. They have to follow the rules. But I don't think this was just a rule-based thing. That's one thing that you can agree with. People need to follow the rule. My point was about the crocodile tears that being shed by Apno over mangrove, taking a trip in the river Harmon. He didn't take a trip for development for anything over there. Did he take a trip to Wales when they were firing 2,000 people? He gone down the river shedding crocodile tears about, you know, oh, they cut down the mangrove here. No sincerity, you see it. It's a political issue. That is the crocodile tears that I have, it rubs me the wrong way.
Okay. Sir, you mentioned that we lost the new agreement with Norway. Can you...
Yeah, because...
negotiations that were ongoing to...
No, but nothing. We got zero. In 5 years, we have lost... So the agreement would have expired in 2015. Under the PPP plan, we would have had a successor agreement. There was no successor agreement. So that meant we were not paid for environmental services or forest carbon services for the 5 years they were there. They were just living off of the money that we earned, the PPP earned and left, the 200-odd million. Nothing. So as soon as we got back in, we started re-engaging Norway on that successor agreement. Then, as the president pointed out, we have been working with this art, right? So this is the architecture for RED Plus transactions. And we have an MOU with this group, an NGO called the Emergent Group. So Emergent Group, we signed the MOU. They will, like how Norway was paying us $5 per ton. This group will underwrite our carbon at $10 per ton. So at a minimum, you're getting $10 per ton. If they go to the voluntary markets or any market and sell our forest carbon at $8 or $5 because there's no market for it, they still have to pay us $10. If they sell it at $20, then they just deduct their admin costs. So we get our 10 and say the admin cost for them is $2, and then we get an additional $8. So there's no risk to us, absolutely no risk. And it's part a US NGO working with others. John Kerry spoke about this when President Biden, he spoke at the launch of this activity. And when I had a roundtable with him, with John Kerry, who is their environmental person, I mentioned that about Guyana. We're the first country to sign that MOU with Emergent. And so we're hoping to get back some profile in the market where the profile also helps the country a lot.
Has the company found any markets?
What?
Had the company Emergent, has they?
No, but this is not like overnight. Remember, this climate change thing takes time to get going. So we're hoping that, but you have to also be there and put your product out and then strengthen your product through MRV. We have issues with baseline, where they set baseline, so it's not all easy. APNU thinks you can just talk about these things. These are highly technical issues that you work on every single day, highly technical. And that work, I can assure you, is being done. Whilst they're yapping a thing like
One person said, the rumor mill now that we told the police to identify by ethnicity every policeman in every police station. This crazy one, what's his name? What's his name, call me?
Mahipo, yes, anyhow. Yes, he just posted that. A lie, total lie. It's not true. And that's all they do, all they spread racism. They wouldn't have a discussion about a technical issue like that moves the country forward. They would never have a discussion about that. And Harman had this portfolio because he was the focal point for GCF and all of those things. It made a mess of the total situation. Just collecting money, signing grants, using up the money for institutional strengthening with no strategic goal in place or a point where the whole purpose of this is not just to save the environment, but to create jobs from environmental services and earn money for the country. They missed those 2 points. Yes, please.
Mr. Jagdeo, on the issue of vaccination, if persons are refusing to take the vaccine, will the government make it compulsory?
Would the government make it compulsory? I think in many ways in parts of the world, we'd have to look at the global experience. Right now, that's not on the card. We're still hoping to encourage people to. But I think the world and many countries are going to go that route. And already some countries are saying, you can't travel to my country if you're not vaccinated and stuff like that. You heard talk about vaccine passports and everything else. So at some stage, right now it's not on the card, but I don't know if the world goes that way, we may very well have to do it too. But that will require legislative change, so it would have to be debated in the parliament, etc. Yes, please.
Mr. Vice President, regarding the revised permit for Exxon, there are some preparations in the public domain that the $30 that is being levied on the company, they will not have to pay that full amount. It is being proffered that the country will have to stand some of that cost. Could you address that for us, sir?
I just did. I said that I pointed those two things out. That a ton of nonsense. That one, that there's a view that we'll have to amend or under this stability clause because they pay an additional sum, the one that Trotman signed, which says that if Exxon has any taxes to pay or anything of that sort, the government will have to pay it. That is what Trotman left us with, the APNU legacy. And our answer is no. Will there be no compensation? The government will not pay it. So I dealt with that at the beginning. And we don't believe, on the second point, we don't believe that this fee is recoverable against cost oil too. So that is our position. Is there anything else? I think I've exhausted. Now, Nazima, right. You have another round.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, earlier this year, the Canadian Mint had made an allegation and there was a probe by the gold board. Are there any findings from that board? I think the particular complaint was that the gold being supplied by a particular supplier was illegal.
Which supplier?
Pardon me?
You want to mention the name of the supplier?
Yeah, the very popular Jagmohan.
Yes, well, since then, the gold board has not purchased any gold from Mr. Jagmohan.
Was there a probe? I'm trying to find out.
Yes, but since then, the gold board, that is what they said. They didn't make a specific, but the gold board has not purchased any gold from last year. I think it was sometime in September.
Yeah.
September to now, any gold from him. And we have been looking at situation where we believe that the gold, there was a claim that gold from Venezuela was coming into, but not just in relation to that supplier. We have found no evidence of that. Nevertheless, we have not purchased any gold. The gold board has not purchased any gold from then to now.
Have our relationship with the Canadian Mint returned to normal?
No, I think the issue was not just that, but there were other issues about cost for them to do it and stuff like that.
Two final questions. Has the issue of the GPLC chairman of the board, the company buying vehicles from the company that he's CEO of, engaged cabinet in
Okay.
any way?
I don't know because I go to cabinet occasionally, so I don't really go all the time. So I may not know that one, but if it went to the discussion at the cabinet. But I saw what was in the public domain, and I saw the explanation from GPL that it was an open public tender. And this company, we have to get people who are skilled from the private sector to serve on these entities too. But if they all can't, by virtue of being in one of the entities, have their company do any business, it's a policy position we have to take. So I saw the explanation given by GPL that this was a public open tender and they won the bid fairly and squarely. It was not as though they said we're sole sourcing from this company. But I can't answer that question about whether it engaged cabinet directly because I don't, I go when I want,
Which brings
yes,
me
to
to
the
my
cabinet.
final question, Mr. Jagdeo. I don't know if your statement have any bearing on it, but the post-cabinet press briefings, when are we going to return?
Oh, okay. I saw the
Frequent.
president promise this, and he's taking it seriously. He's taking this seriously.
Do you know how soon?
I can't tell you that, but I know he promised it, and once he promises, he will deliver. Thank you very much.